What if buying real estate first in 2026 is actually one of the slowest ways to build wealth from zero? Not the smartest, the slowest. Everyone around you will tell you the opposite. Buy property early. Get on the ladder. Use leverage. They're not making more land. You've heard every version of it. And honestly, for decades, that advice worked unbelievably well. Entire millionaire stories were built on buying one decent property at the right time and holding it long enough. So this is the part where people assume I'm about to say real estate is dead. I'm not. Real estate still creates enormous wealth. But if I personally woke up broke in 2026 with no assets, no audience, no inheritance, and no high-income career, I would not touch property first. Because the game beginners think they're entering doesn't exist anymore. And almost nobody talking about real estate online is willing to admit what replaced it. If you find contents like this interesting, hit the like button and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next video. But nobody ever asks the obvious question. If real estate is still the ultimate path to wealth, then why are so many first-time buyers in 2026 technically owners while still living paycheck to paycheck? Why are people making $120,000 a year afraid of a broken water heater? Why are investors with 3 rental properties still trapped at jobs they hate? Not because real estate stopped working, because the version people promote online quietly assumes something most beginners no longer have. Excess cash flow. That's the hidden requirement nobody mentions. Real estate is an amplifier, not a rescue plan. If you're already financially stable, property can multiply wealth beautifully over time. But when you start from zero, every vacancy, repair rate increase, insurance jump, tax reassessment, or bad tenant hits like a financial car crash. And meanwhile, your down payment is frozen inside in a liquid asset earning a slower compounding curve than most people realize. Here's the actual data. The median American homeowner under 35 has less than $8,000 in liquid savings after buying their first property. Not equity, not Zestimate fantasy numbers. Actual accessible cash. And according to multiple housing affordability reports in 2026, nearly half of first-time buyers spend over 40% of their monthly income just servicing housing costs alone. That's before investing, before retirement contributions, before unexpected repairs, before childcare, before life does what life always does. And here's the part that makes this genuinely disorienting. Many of these people technically look wealthy on paper because their net worth includes home equity. But home equity doesn't pay your electric bill when your HVAC system dies. It doesn't cover vacancies. It doesn't stop a layoff from turning leverage into panic. Half the people following the buy real estate first playbook are asset rich, cash poor, stressed constantly, and quietly trapped inside the thing they thought created freedom. Real estate companies, banks, mortgage lenders, financial influencers, and even your parents benefit from you believing the simplified version of property investing. Buy a house and build wealth is clean. It's emotionally comforting. It sounds responsible. And most importantly, it's easy to sell. The full truth is much harder to package because it undermines the fantasy people are buying into. The reality is that modern real estate wealth usually requires strong cash flow, long holding periods, liquidity reserves, low behavioral panic, and the ability to survive years where the returns feel painfully average. But nobody makes viral content saying, buy property, stay stressed for 7 years, reinvest everything, and maybe eventually it works. So instead, people market the visible outcome. The Airbnb income screenshot, the appreciation chart, the luxury lifestyle. They skip the invisible fee drag, the capital expenditure budget, the vacancies, the refinancing risk, and the years where almost nothing feels like freedom at all. Here's how wealth building from zero actually works in 2026. In the beginning, your most valuable asset is not leverage. It's liquidity and income acceleration. The people who escape financial fragility fastest usually focus first on increasing cash flow, building high-income skills, automating investments, and creating a compounding engine that stays flexible. Because compounding only becomes powerful once you cross a contribution threshold large enough to matter. And that threshold arrives much faster when your money stays liquid. Let's say someone builds a business, career, or investment portfolio generating an extra $3,000 monthly. invested consistently into low-friction assets earning real effective returns. That capital compounds while remaining accessible. No tenant calls, no closing costs, no property tax spikes, no six-figure debt obligation attached to a single geographic market. Then later, once cash flow becomes stable and reserves exist, real estate transforms from a dangerous survival gamble into what it actually is, an amplifier of existing financial strength. Most people trying to build wealth through real estate are doing the right thing on the surface while making the wrong move underneath. They save aggressively for a down payment, stretch their debt-to-income ratio to qualify, buy the biggest property the bank approves, and then spend the next 5 years financially exhausted protecting the asset they thought would free them. That's a behavioral gap nobody talks about. They're using leverage before building stability. They're chasing appreciation before creating strong cash flow. And because of that, every setback becomes emotionally expensive. One vacancy suddenly matters. One repair becomes a crisis. One rate increase changes their entire monthly budget. Meanwhile, the people actually accelerating wealth usually spent those same early years increasing income, building liquid investments, and creating optionality first. By the time they finally buy property, they are no longer depending on the property to save them financially. That changes everything psychologically, because leverage works very differently when desperation is removed from the equation. Instead of rushing into a mortgage with 5% down and no liquidity, I would build wealth from zero in a completely different order. First, increase income aggressively until saving and investing no longer feel fragile. Second, automate investments into low-friction assets every single month until you cross a real compounding activation threshold. For most people, that means consistently deploying at least $1,500 to $3,000 monthly before lifestyle inflation absorbs it. Third, build a serious cash reserve before touching leverage at all. No advisor needed. No perfect timing needed. No viral passive income fantasy required. Then, and only then, I would consider real estate. Because at that point, property stops being your lifeboat and becomes a strategic capital allocation tool. Vacancies become inconveniences instead of emergencies. Market downturns become opportunities instead of panic attacks. And most importantly, you can hold long enough for leverage and appreciation to actually do what social media promised they would do from the beginning. Year one, honestly, this feels slow and almost disappointing. Your friends buying properties look richer than you. They have keys, granite countertops, mortgage screenshots, and visible progress. You have liquid investments, growing skills, increasing cash flow, and a system quietly compounding in the background. Year 3 to 5, this is where the first real signal appears. Your investment accounts start accelerating. Your income feels less fragile. You can survive emergencies without debt. Opportunities stop feeling impossible. Then somewhere around year 7 to 10, the inflection happens. You're no longer chasing money from a position of panic. You have liquidity, optionality, leverage capacity, and the ability to buy assets without gambling your survival to do it. Most people quit this strategy in year 2 because it looks boring before it looks powerful. The plan isn't broken. The timeline is just longer than the internet sells you. Subscribe right now, because the people who understand this before everyone else will quietly dominate the next decade financially, while everyone else stays trapped chasing the old playbook.